Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens didn't become one of the most hated figures in football overnight. His reputation came from years of making headlines for all the wrong reasons. While there's no denying his Hall of Fame-level talent, he had a knack for creating tension wherever he went. Over 15 seasons and 5 teams, Owens made it clear he valued the spotlight more than the locker room harmony. His troubles really took off in San Francisco, where he played from 1996 to 2003. What started as fun touchdown celebrations soon turned into theatrical stunts aimed at grabbing media attention. In one infamous moment in 2000, after scoring against the Cowboys, he ran straight to the star logo at midfield and danced on it. Not once, but twice. On his second trip, Cowboys safety George T. laid him out. Fans saw it not just as showboating, but as a clear sign he cared more about putting on a show than respecting the game. Things went from bad to worse in Philadelphia. He joined the Eagles in 2004 and helped carry them to the Super Bowl. But he didn't stick to football. Just 1 year into a 7-year deal, he demanded a raise, hired Drew Rosenhaus, and blasted the front office in public. He even claimed the team would be undefeated with Brett Favre instead of Donovan McNabb, something that caused a permanent rift between the two. That was just the start. Owens was eventually suspended after he criticized McNabb during a TV interview, got into it with Hugh Douglas at practice, and refused to take responsibility. Meanwhile, his agent gave one of the most awkward press conferences in sports history, answering nearly every question with "next question." It just added fuel to the fire. Then came Dallas. Owens joined the Cowboys in 2006 and stayed through 2008, where he once again stirred the pot. He had issues with Tony Romo, despite being heavily featured in the offense. After a game, he gave an emotional defense of Romo, saying, "That's my quarterback," which quickly became a meme. Most people didn't buy it. They saw it as another performance, not a genuine moment. Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's hatred developed through a series of unpredictable behaviors and public outbursts that turned him from an elite receiver into one of the league's most criticized figures, all in less than 2 years. His unraveling began in 2018, his final season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That year, he posted 104 receptions for 1,297 yards, but his growing conflicts with teammates and coaches caused deep tension within the locker room. The situation came to a head when Brown skipped the team's final practice and walkthrough for a critical Week 17 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. His absence was unannounced and unauthorized, leaving his teammates without their star receiver for a game that would decide their playoff position. As a result, he was benched. The incident fueled an open rift with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, which soon spilled over into social media, where Brown publicly questioned his former quarterback's leadership. After being traded to the Oakland Raiders in 2019, Brown's behavior quickly spiraled. He missed mandatory practices due to frostbite sustained during cryotherapy. That was followed by a heated dispute with general manager Mike Mayock over the NFL's updated helmet policy, which banned his preferred model. During the confrontation, Brown allegedly called Mayock a racial slur and threatened physical violence, an act that crossed professional boundaries. The Raiders eventually released Brown after he shared a private phone call with head coach Gruden on social media without permission, broke team rules about online behavior, and asked for his release via a dramatic Instagram post. Not long after, he signed with the New England Patriots. That stint, however, lasted only 11 days. Brown was accused of sexual assault and rape by his former trainer, Brittany Taylor. The allegations included detailed claims of inappropriate conduct, which Brown denied. However, the legal pressure prompted the Patriots to sever ties.
Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh built his career as a powerful defensive lineman, but also as one of the NFL's most fined and suspended players. His reputation for dirty play began as early as his rookie season in 2010 with the Detroit Lions, and only intensified from there. On Thanksgiving Day in 2011, with millions watching, Suh stomped on the arm of Packers guard Evan Dietrich Smith after the play was already over. Suh tried to explain it as a misunderstanding, claiming he lost his balance. But the footage showed a different story, one where Suh looked down and deliberately drove his foot onto Dietrich Smith's arm. The league suspended him for 2 games without pay, costing him $164,000. That moment became symbolic of his reputation for unsportsmanlike conduct. There were other incidents too. He delivered a late and dangerous hit to Bears quarterback Jay Cutler in 2010, slamming him to the ground after the ball had been released. He was fined $15,000. In 2012, he kicked Texans quarterback Matt Schaub in the groin while on the ground. Another accident Suh insisted wasn't intentional. The video suggested otherwise. During just his first 4 seasons, Suh was fined over $216,000. Fans and players began to view him not as a dominant player, but as someone who targeted opponents with intent to harm. That label followed him across stints with the Dolphins, Buccaneers, and Eagles. Vontaze Burfict. Vontaze Burfict earned one of the most notorious reputations in NFL history, not just because of how hard he played, but because of how dangerous he became. As a linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals from 2012 to 2018, Burfict developed a pattern of brutal, illegal hits that led to one of the longest cumulative suspensions in league history. The defining moment of his career happened during the 2016 wildcard playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. With less than 20 seconds on the clock, Burfict launched himself helmet first into a defenseless Antonio Brown, striking him square in the head. The hit drew a 15-yard penalty, moving the Steelers into easy field goal range, which they converted for the win. Brown was diagnosed with a concussion and missed the following playoff game. The hit became a symbol of Burfict's complete disregard for player safety. That wasn't an isolated incident. In earlier matchups against the Steelers, Burfict was caught on camera twisting players' ankles after the whistle. His 2015 hit on Le'Veon Bell looked like a deliberate attempt to injure, with knee-to-knee contact that sidelined Bell for the rest of the year. These weren't the kinds of hits that came with the territory. They seemed personal, targeted, and beyond the bounds of even the most aggressive play. Over the course of his career, Burfict was suspended for a total of 18 games, a record for on-field behavior. His final suspension came in 2019 after a helmet-to-helmet hit on Colts tight end Jack Doyle. That 12-game ban, the longest ever for an in-game incident, effectively ended his career. No team was willing to take a chance on him again. To many fans and players, Burfict wasn't just reckless. He was seen as someone who weaponized the game itself. His name became synonymous with unnecessary violence, and his presence on the field felt like a threat, not just to opponents, but to the integrity of football as a whole.
Ray Rice. Ray Rice's story became one of the most defining and disturbing turning points in NFL history, not just because of what he did, but because of how the league initially responded. Rice was a star running back for the Baltimore Ravens, a key part of their offense, and widely respected on the field. But in February 2014, everything changed. Rice was arrested for assaulting his then-fiancée, Janae Palmer, in an elevator at the Revel Casino in Atlantic City. Early reports only described it as a physical altercation, and the first video released by TMZ showed him dragging her unconscious body out of the elevator. Palmer appeared limp and unresponsive. The footage shocked the public, but the NFL responded with only a 2-game suspension. It was seen as incredibly lenient given the apparent violence. The situation escalated months later when a second video showing the elevator's interior surfaced. In this clip, Rice is seen delivering a single, vicious punch that knocked Palmer out cold. The video left no doubt. It wasn't a scuffle. It wasn't mutual. It was a deliberate pact of violence. Rice looked down at her body, made no move to help, and then dragged her into the hallway like she was nothing. The images were chilling. After the second video was released, the Ravens immediately cut ties with Rice, and the NFL suspended him indefinitely. The backlash was fierce, not just against Rice, but against Commissioner Roger Goodell and the entire league. People demanded to know why the NFL had handed down such a light punishment when the full footage was reportedly available all along. The league claimed it hadn't seen the second video until it went public, but few believed that explanation. Rice never played another down in the NFL. He tried to make a comeback, but no team signed him. His name became permanently linked with domestic violence and with the league's initial failure to treat it seriously. Even after marrying Palmer and issuing multiple apologies, the damage was done. For many fans, his career ended not because of what happened in that elevator, but because he showed the world exactly who he was, and the world couldn't forget it. Richie Incognito. Richie Incognito's name became synonymous with bullying in the NFL. His reputation had always leaned toward the aggressive, both on the field and in the locker room. But it wasn't until the 2013 scandal involving teammate Jonathan Martin that the full extent of his behavior was exposed. What happened in Miami wasn't just rough talk between players. It was prolonged psychological abuse. Martin, a young offensive lineman, endured constant harassment. Incognito used racial slurs, made violent threats, and treated him like a target instead of a teammate. In one voicemail from April 2013, Incognito said, "I'm gonna slap your real mother across the face," and used multiple racial epithets, despite Martin being biracial. This wasn't locker room banter. It was cruelty, repeated day after day. But it didn't stop at words. Incognito demanded Martin pay $15,000 for a Vegas trip he didn't even attend. Martin was also pressured into covering expensive team dinners and social events, where he'd then be further ostracized. These weren't optional gestures. They were enforced through intimidation and backed by the fear of being excluded, mocked, or attacked. The final straw came in October 2013. Martin entered the team cafeteria, and when he sat down, a group of players, including Incognito, stood up and walked away. The humiliation was the last in a long line. Martin left the facility, and the story soon became public. The NFL commissioned an independent investigation led by attorney Ted Wells. The findings were clear. Incognito had led a pattern of abuse that violated every standard of decency and professionalism. He was suspended indefinitely and became the face of toxic masculinity in professional sports. While some teammates defended him, claiming it was just how football worked, most fans and analysts saw it differently. Incognito wasn't holding someone accountable or toughening them up. He was breaking them down. Though he eventually returned to football and played for other teams, the shadow of that scandal never really lifted. Richie Incognito will always be remembered less for his blocking skills and more for showing just how cruel a locker room could become when no one speaks up.
Michael Vick. Michael Vick's story is one of the most painful and complicated in sports. At the height of his career, he was seen as revolutionary, a quarterback with an arm like a cannon and the speed of a running back. He was the face of the Atlanta Falcons, a once-in-a-generation talent who'd signed a massive $130 million contract. Then, the dogfighting scandal hit, and everything changed. Between 2001 and 2007, Vick financed and operated Bad News Kennels, a dogfighting ring based out of his property in rural Virginia. It wasn't just a hobby. It was an organized, brutal operation where pit bulls were bred and trained to fight for money. The dogs were housed in kennels specifically designed for combat, with equipment like treadmills and hanging devices used to condition them. Gambling played a huge part. These weren't just backyard brawls. This was a business. What shocked people even more than the fights was the cruelty. Dogs that didn't perform well weren't simply retired or given away. They were killed by hanging, drowning, electrocution, or being slammed into the ground. In one especially gruesome incident, Vick personally helped kill 6 to 8 dogs because they didn't measure up in test fights. In April 2007, federal investigators raided the property. They found dog carcasses, blood-stained equipment, and records of betting. At first, Vick denied everything, to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, to Falcons owner Arthur Blank, and to the public. But the evidence was overwhelming. He eventually pled guilty to federal charges of conspiracy related to dogfighting and served 23 months in prison. When the details became public, fans didn't just turn on him, they were horrified. The idea that someone so admired could be involved in something so violent and calculated was hard to process. For animal rights groups and many sports fans, Vick's actions weren't just criminal, they were unforgivable. Vick did return to the NFL, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles and a few other teams. He expressed remorse and even worked with animal advocacy groups, but the stigma never left. To this day, many fans still refuse to cheer for him or acknowledge his accomplishments. For them, the image of what happened at Bad News Kennels overshadows anything he did on the field. Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez's fall was unlike anything the NFL had ever seen. He went from a rising star with the New England Patriots to a convicted murderer in just a few short years. What shocked people most wasn't just the crime, it was how quickly the mask came off. One moment he was catching touchdowns, the next he was being led away in handcuffs. Hernandez joined the Patriots in 2010 and quickly made a name for himself. By 2012, he'd signed a 5-year, $40 million contract extension. He looked like a cornerstone for the future, but behind the scenes, things were spiraling. There were gang connections, drug use, and stories of escalating violence. The most damning event happened in June 2013, when Odin Lloyd, a semi-professional football player dating Hernandez's fiance's sister, was found shot to death in an industrial park not far from Hernandez's home. Security footage from Hernandez's house showed him holding what looked like a gun, both before and after the murder took place. The Patriots didn't wait. They released him the same day he was arrested. In 2015, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even after that, the story wasn't over. He was charged in connection with a 2012 double homicide in Boston, where two men, Daniel de Abreu and Safiro Furtado, were shot after what appeared to be a nightclub encounter. Although he was acquitted in that case, the fact that he was even a suspect in multiple killings revealed how much he had hidden from the public and his team. In April 2017, Hernandez was found dead in his prison cell, having taken his own life. A posthumous examination of his brain showed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a condition linked to repeated head trauma. His family argued that CTE had played a role in his behavior, but to many fans, that wasn't enough to explain what he had done. They saw it as a possible factor, but not a justification. Hernandez's story left a deep scar on the league. He wasn't just a player who made bad decisions, he was someone who had fooled everyone, his coaches, his teammates, and the fans. And when the truth came out, it changed the way people thought about character, risk, and what it really means to know someone in professional sports. O.J. Simpson might be the most polarizing figure the NFL has ever produced. For years, he was beloved, a Hall of Fame running back, a charismatic broadcaster, and a Hollywood actor. He had charm, a $1 million smile, and the kind of crossover appeal that made him a household name even after his playing days ended. But then came 1994, and everything changed. On the night of June 12, 1994, Simpson's ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found brutally murdered outside Nicole's home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. The scene was horrific. Nicole had been nearly decapitated, and Goldman had defensive wounds all over his body, suggesting he fought hard before he died. Almost immediately, suspicion turned toward O.J., who had a history of domestic abuse, including a 1989 arrest for assaulting Nicole. When the LAPD came to arrest him on June 17th, he didn't show. Instead, he fled in a white Ford Bronco driven by his friend Al Cowlings. What followed was one of the most surreal moments in television history, a slow-speed police chase watched live by nearly 95 million people. Inside the Bronco, Simpson held a gun to his head and threatened suicide. It was a scene that felt like fiction, but was horrifyingly real.
The trial that followed in 1995 became the most watched and dissected criminal case in American history. The evidence seemed overwhelming: blood matching Simpson's found at the scene, a glove discovered on his property, and a timeline that placed him at the murder location. But his legal team, dubbed the Dream Team, argued that the evidence had been mishandled and planted by racist police officers. Their strategy worked. On October 3, 1995, Simpson was found not guilty. The verdict tore the country in two. Many white Americans believed justice had been denied, while many black Americans viewed the outcome as long overdue accountability for a justice system that so often failed them. Still, the public's opinion of Simpson had permanently shifted. Even though he was acquitted, a civil court later found him liable for the deaths, ordering him to pay $33.5 million in damages. He never recovered his reputation. Later run-ins with the law, including a 2007 armed robbery conviction that led to a prison sentence, only deepened the public's disdain. Today, O.J. Simpson is known less for his football legacy and more for the trial that divided a nation. He's a cautionary tale about fame, violence, and how quickly a public figure can fall from grace. Deshaun Watson went from being one of the NFL's brightest young quarterbacks to the most controversial active player in the league. He wasn't just accused of one or two serious infractions, he was accused by over 25 women of sexual misconduct, all centered around massage therapy sessions. The volume and nature of the allegations shocked fans and reshaped his legacy almost overnight. It all began in March 2021 when Houston massage therapist Ashley Solis came forward. She claimed Watson exposed himself during a session at her home and purposely touched her hand with his genitals. She said he became more aggressive, ignored her protests, and pressured her to engage in sexual acts. Solis's decision to go public opened the floodgates. Within weeks, 22 more women filed lawsuits detailing similar experiences. The allegations painted a disturbing pattern. Women described being coerced, touched inappropriately, and in some cases assaulted during private sessions. Some said he forced them to perform oral sex or ejaculated on them. Most felt intimidated by his status and strength and worried about retaliation. It wasn't just isolated behavior, it was coordinated, repeated, and deeply unsettling. Despite the legal storm swirling around him, the Cleveland Browns made a stunning move in March 2022. They traded 6 draft picks, including 3 first-rounders, to acquire Watson and gave him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract, the largest in NFL history at the time. The deal included protections to reduce his financial loss during a likely suspension, leading many to believe the team was prioritizing winning over ethics. Watson was eventually suspended for 11 games and fined $5 million. The punishment, many argued, was too light given the number and severity of the allegations. When he returned to play in December 2022, protests erupted in stadiums, online, and in front of team facilities. His comeback felt like a slap in the face to those advocating for accountability and justice. Watson settled with 24 of his accusers, with total payouts estimated between $33 and $55 million. To the public, these settlements felt like hush money rather than acts of contrition. And the story didn't end there. In September 2024, more allegations came to light, bringing the known total to 27. Once again, Watson reached a confidential settlement. To his critics, Watson isn't just a player who made bad decisions. He's a symbol of how wealth, status, and athletic talent can shield someone from real consequences. The anger toward him isn't just about what he's accused of, it's about what his return says about professional sports and who it protects.
Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders sit at number 10, and they're hated because they built a villain identity while delivering nothing but chaos and dysfunction. This franchise has cultivated a bad boy image for decades, but that outlaw reputation has curdled into pure organizational incompetence. 4 relocations in 40 years tell the story. Oakland to Los Angeles in 1982, back to Oakland in 1995, then abandoning their loyal fan base again for Las Vegas in 2020. Each move left behind generations of devoted fans who supported the team through decades of mediocrity, all so the organization could chase bigger profits in shinier stadiums. Their Las Vegas stadium looks glamorous from the outside, but the atmosphere feels more like a tourist attraction than a football cathedral. Visiting fans regularly take over the seats because actual Raiders supporters can't afford the inflated ticket prices that come with playing in a desert resort town. The franchise has been defined more by scandals than success in recent years. John Gruden's racist and homophobic email scandal in 2021, Henry Ruggs' fatal DUI crash in 2022, and Damon Arnett's social media gun threats cemented a reputation for recklessness at every organizational level. On the field, 2024 ended in complete disaster with 4 wins, 13 losses, and the firing of both their head coach and general manager. The Raiders cling to their villain identity while delivering wasted potential, constant instability, and organizational dysfunction that makes them easy targets for every other fan base's frustration. Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns land at number 9, and they transformed from lovable losers into one of the league's most despised franchises the moment they guaranteed Deshaun Watson $230 million in 2022, while he faced over 24 sexual misconduct allegations. The NFL suspended Watson for 11 games, but the stain on the organization never faded. By 2025, even owner Jimmy Haslam admitted the Watson trade was a big swing and a miss, but the damage to their reputation was already complete. Other fan bases watched Cleveland mortgage their future and integrity for a quarterback with massive character concerns, then act surprised when it backfired spectacularly. Now, their roster is stuck in complete limbo. Watson is recovering from another Achilles surgery and may never play meaningful football again. Joe Flacco, at 40 years old, opens 2025 as their starting quarterback. Behind him are rookies Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, along with Kenny Pickett battling injuries. Sanders showed flashes in preseason with 2 touchdowns, but their quarterback room looks more like a desperate committee than any kind of solution. The Browns generate additional hate through their constant media attention, despite decades of failure. Since returning to the NFL in 1999, they've had exactly 1 playoff win. Yet they receive coverage like they're a dynasty in waiting, while actually successful teams get ignored by national media. They've burned through 39 different starting quarterbacks since 1999, creating a quarterback carousel that's infuriating for other fan bases to watch. This level of organizational dysfunction continuing to exist in a professional league frustrates fans who see such obvious incompetence rewarded with endless coverage and sympathy. Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens sit at number 8, and they're hated for building their identity on defensive brutality while consistently failing when the games matter most. This franchise was born from controversy when Art Modell moved the Browns out of Cleveland in 1996, erasing another city's football legacy to create their own. The Ravens built their reputation on punishment and intimidation. The defenses of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed made games feel like violent collisions more than football contests, and their physical style often crossed the line into what opponents considered dirty football. To rival teams, Baltimore perfected the art of borderline illegal hits that somehow escaped referee attention. Their history of employing controversial players deepened the animosity. Ray Lewis was their franchise face for years, despite his connection to a double murder case in Atlanta. The organization's willingness to overlook serious character issues as long as players could perform on the field frustrated fan bases across the league who watched them prioritize winning over integrity. Today, the face of their franchise is Lamar Jackson, a 2-time MVP who's electrifying in regular season play, but still searching for postseason validation. His playoff record stands at 3-5, with the 2023 AFC Championship collapse against Kansas City still hanging over both him and the organization. The Ravens regularly post 12-win seasons and talk like champions, but when January arrives, their formula consistently breaks down. They combine swagger, defensive violence, and regular season dominance with postseason futility that makes their confidence feel unearned. A franchise that acts like they've won multiple championships when they haven't hoisted a Lombardi trophy in over a decade. San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers check in at number 7, and they're hated for living off a reputation that ended decades ago while consistently wasting elite talent in the modern era. 5 Super Bowls, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Stevie Young. Their past is untouchable, but their present is defined by choking when it matters most. Their current roster is one of the most stacked in football, with Christian McCaffrey, Nick Bosa, George Kittle, and Fred Warner. Year after year, they're projected as Super Bowl favorites. Year after year, they collapse in crucial moments and find new ways to waste championship-level talent. Super Bowl 58 was their latest heartbreak. Leading late in the fourth quarter against Kansas City, they lost in overtime 25-22, proving once again that Kyle Shanahan teams crumble under pressure in the biggest games. The 2024 season followed with a shocking last-place finish in the NFC West, showing even the most talented roster can completely self-destruct. ESPN still projects them as division favorites in 2025, but only because they were handed the league's easiest schedule. Another example of how the media treats them like a dynasty in waiting despite a decade of almosts and organizational failures. The 49ers strut around like they're championship material, but the reality is they've become specialists in wasting opportunities. In the biggest games, they're less a juggernaut and more a mirage that appears when pressure mounts. Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers land at number 6, and the hate comes from decades of quarterback privilege that no franchise should deserve. 3 straight generations of elite quarterbacks, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Jordan Love, represents unprecedented good fortune that rival fan bases watch with pure envy and frustration. The Packers have enjoyed this quarterback luxury for over 30 years, yet they've only managed to deliver 2 Super Bowls across all that talent. Other fan bases look at Green Bay and see the ultimate example of wasted potential. How do you have 3 Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks in a row and only win twice? Their community-owned status gets paraded around like some kind of moral superiority over other franchises. The fan stock certificates are purely ceremonial with zero real power. But Packers fans act like they're running some noble democratic experiment, while everyone else sells out to corporate ownership. The NFL showers Green Bay with primetime games even when they're not legitimate contenders, treating them like a historic powerhouse when their recent results don't justify the coverage. Lambeau Field gets marketed as sacred ground, but the reverence feels manufactured when you examine their actual championship production. Jordan Love's emergence after one strong season immediately earned him a massive contract extension, proving the Packers are again overvaluing their quarterback position while ignoring glaring roster weaknesses that prevent championship runs. Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers sit at number 5, and they're hated for clinging to past glory while mastering the art of playoff mediocrity. This franchise built its identity on the Steel Curtain defense and 6 Lombardi trophies, but their modern era tells a completely different story of stagnation disguised as competence. Mike Tomlin's famous streak of never having a losing season has become the franchise's shield against criticism, but it hides a brutal truth. The Steelers have become specialists in meaningless 9-win seasons without any real threat of contending for a championship. They pile up regular season wins that fool their fan base into thinking they're still elite. Since Ben Roethlisberger retired, the quarterback position has been complete chaos. Kenny Pickett never developed into anything resembling a franchise player, and the 2024 Russell Wilson experiment crashed and burned quickly. The organization's inability to develop or identify quarterback talent has exposed their front office incompetence. Now, in 2025, the Steelers made the league's most desperate gamble by signing 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers and trading for DK Metcalf. Rodgers hasn't played meaningful football since tearing his Achilles in New York, yet he's already influencing roster decisions and organizational direction. Pittsburgh is mortgaging their future for one last grasp at relevance with a quarterback who might not have anything left. The Steelers are hated because they pretend their standard hasn't completely slipped. They act like perennial contenders while mastering mediocrity, using their historical success to shield themselves from the reality that they haven't been championship caliber in years. New England Patriots. The New England Patriots check in at number 4, and they're hated for how they achieved their dominance. For 2 decades, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady terrorized the entire league, winning 6 Super Bowls and appearing in 9 total. But their dynasty was never clean, and that stench still lingers. The Patriots' legacy is permanently stained by cheating scandals that rival fan bases will never forget. Spygate in 2007 revealed they were illegally filming opponents' sidelines and signals. Deflategate in 2015 showed they were manipulating game equipment. Countless other accusations of bending rules made every opponent believe New England wasn't just better, they were gaming the system to gain unfair advantages. Every Patriots victory felt tainted to rival fans who watched referees make questionable calls in crucial moments. The organization's arrogant response to these scandals, acting like victims instead of acknowledging wrongdoing, only deepened the resentment across the league. Since Tom Brady left for Tampa Bay in 2020, the Patriots have been completely irrelevant. Multiple losing seasons, failed quarterback experiments, and Bill Belichick's departure in 2024 signals the true end of their era. Mike Vrabel now inherits a roster that hasn't been dangerous in years and lacks the talent to compete with elite teams. The Patriots are hated because their dynasty fundamentally changed how fans view competitive fairness in the NFL. Even in their current state of decline, the reputation for cheating and the arrogance they displayed during their peak years ensures the hatred persists long after the relevance ended. Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles sit at number 3, and they're transformed from lovable underdogs into one of the league's most arrogant franchises after their Super Bowl 59 victory over Kansas City. Instead of celebrating quietly, they turn their championship into a spectacle designed to irritate every other fan base in the league. Their July 2025 ring ceremony was a Hollywood production, complete with hidden inscriptions and flashy design elements meant to flex on the entire NFL. Players like Jordan Mailata refused to even call themselves defending champions, saying, "We're not defending anything, we're here to take war." That attitude didn't earn respect from rivals, it inflamed them. Philadelphia already had the most infamous fan culture in professional sports. These are the fans who booed Santa Claus, threw batteries at opposing players, and forced the city to install a courtroom and jail inside Veterans Stadium. Success has only amplified that notorious reputation instead of mellowing it out. Lincoln Financial Field is now as hostile as any venue in the league, but the hostility is wrapped in championship confidence that makes it even more insufferable for visiting teams. The Eagles fan base combined their natural aggression with newfound superiority, creating a toxic environment that opposing players and fans absolutely despise. Even before the 2025 season starts, Philadelphia is already selling back-to-back champions merchandise, showing their presumption that another title is inevitable. The rest of the league watches this arrogance and roots harder for their downfall than almost any other franchise. Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys land at number 2, and they're hated for being famous for absolutely nothing in the modern era. This franchise hasn't reached a conference championship since 1995, but you'd never know it by the way the NFL treats them like royalty. The Cowboys get maximum primetime television slots, dominate national coverage, and still hold the title of America's team. A nickname that wasn't even earned through fan support, but was created by NFL Films in 1978. Dallas has built a billion-dollar empire off pure branding instead of winning football games. Jerry Jones keeps finding himself in front of every camera available, turning the Cowboys into a soap opera where he's the main character instead of his players. Their 2025 offseason followed the exact same pattern, chasing headlines by trading for George Pickens, leaning on Micah Parsons' individual hype, but still without building a roster constructed for sustained playoff runs. Year after year, the Cowboys crash and burn in January when games actually matter. Yet the NFL continues rewarding them with prime scheduling and coverage like they're champions. Other fan bases watch legitimately successful teams get pushed to regional broadcasts, while Dallas gets national attention for regular season mediocrity. The Cowboys have become the Kardashians of the NFL, endlessly famous, endlessly covered by media, and endlessly disappointing when performance actually matters. They're a franchise that's mastered living off their brand instead of their football, which makes every other fan base sick of hearing about them. Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have officially overtaken Dallas as the NFL's most hated franchise, and the numbers prove it. A BetOnline study of over 120,000 social media posts showed Kansas City generating more negative comments than any other team in league history, surpassing even the Cowboys' decades-long reign at the top of the hate rankings. The resentment isn't just about their winning, it's about how they win and the widespread perception that the rules bend specifically for them. The NFL's scheduling algorithm consistently gives Kansas City primetime games and later regular season paths compared to other contenders. They've faced more backup quarterbacks in critical games than any other elite team, feeding the belief that their dynasty is engineered by the league rather than earned through merit. Refereeing controversies have deepened that perception to conspiracy theory levels. Phantom holding calls that extend drives, soft roughing the passer penalties that protect Patrick Mahomes, and questionable late-game decisions have created widespread suspicion that the league actively protects its golden franchise. The frustration grew so loud that both the referees union and Roger Goodell himself were forced to publicly deny favoritism, the very need for denial proving how entrenched the suspicion has become. The Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift relationship turned Chiefs games into celebrity showcases that made football feel secondary. Networks cut to her luxury suite so often during broadcasts that actual football highlights felt like interruptions. Rival fans grew tired of the Swift effect swallowing airtime while their own teams got pushed into regional coverage. At the center sits Patrick Mahomes, the league's best quarterback, but also its most polarizing player. His no-look passes, comeback drives, and MVP trophies made him the NFL's face, but to opposing fans and players, he feels untouchable and overprotected. Even after losing Super Bowl 59 to Philadelphia, Kansas City remains the center of the NFL's programming grid, representing a system tilted in their favor that every other fan base wants to see fall.